you, which way is the sea? Which way is the sea?
It's the
water.
sea. Yeah.
Now you're pointing that way, you're pointing that way. Well, it's actually that way.
That
Okay? Let me tell you, I had this big group here this day, and there was a lady with her 2 sons. Nice boys, smart boys, well-dressed, well-spoken. The only trouble was they asked me too many questions. Too many questions. But anyway, I said to them, the whole group, which way's the sea? And they all pointed in different directions. And I said, no, it's that way.
I saw the water there.
That's the way it is. Anyway, when I pointed that way, this voice came out of the crowd. Excuse me. And I said, yes. Excuse me, he said. I said, oh yes, son, what is it? He said, that answer you gave is not strictly correct. Now this is a 10, 12-year-old boy. That answer you gave is not correct. And I said, why? Why isn't it correct? He said, the sea surrounds Australia. You can point in any direction. You're pointing at the sea. This had never happened to me before. Do you know, I wanted to kill him. I wanted to kill him on the spot. But the first story I'm going to tell you, because it's important, is what happened here in 1942 in Australia. 5 very large Japanese submarines came down to Sydney, and they met out at sea about 30 kilometres. 3 of them carried a midget submarine on the deck. 2 of them carried aircraft. Now the pilot of one of those aircraft, his name is Susumu Ito. He only died 5 years ago, aged 100. But he flew over Sydney Harbour and he spotted where all the Allied ships were. Then he flew back to the submarines out at sea and told the top captain, whose name was Kanji Matsumura, told him what he'd seen in Sydney Harbour. The next day they launched their 3 midgets into Sydney Harbour. The first one got caught in the boom nets at George's Head. Couldn't extricate himself. They committed suicide. They blew themselves up. The other 2 midgets followed a ferry boat into Sydney Harbour. They tried to sink an American cruiser, the Chicago. They missed the Chicago and sank a depot ship called the Cuttable. They killed 19 Aussies, then 2 English sailors. He then turned around and sailed out. When he got to the heads, instead of turning south towards Cronulla, where the big Japanese submarine was going to pick him up again, for some reason he turned north. There his batteries ran out. He sank to the bottom of the sea. That submarine is still there off Newport Beach. The 2 men are still inside it. You cannot dive on it. It's a war grave. You've got to get permission. The 3rd submarine was depth charged near Taronga Park Zoo in Taylor's Bay. And when they lifted that submarine, the 2 men had shot themselves. So the 2 submarines that were sunk in the harbour, they lifted. They joined a piece of that one to a piece of that one, and that's on show at the Canberra War Memorial. The 4 men inside were given a full naval funeral and their ashes sent back to Japan. Now, because the attack in Sydney was a failure, 1 week later, one of the big submarines, longer than a football field, came up to Newcastle. She lay off the coast here 6.5 kilometres and opened fire on Newcastle. She fired 8 star shells to light the town up, then 26 high explosive shells. The gunners at Fort Scratchley ran to the guns. They only fired 2 shots each, But as I told you up there, you never get your target first time. But they must have been pretty close, because the captain, Matsumura, he wasn't hanging around. He dived to get away, and he got away. But we sank him 11 months later, and in that 11 months, that Japanese captain had sunk another 7 ships. I've got them listed here. The Iron Knight, the Star King, the Kalingo, and he torpedoed 4 others. So he'd done his job, right? So I'll just show you some of the pictures. This is on an open day, and this is the children on an anti-aircraft gun. And you know what the children are firing at? Pelicans. They're making out their aircraft. But there's a wheel that side and a wheel that side. There's a big ship laying on our beach, the Pasha Bulka. Went on the beach in 2007. We saved that ship. We saved it. You might be interested in this. When a Japanese officer goes into danger, his wife gives him a sash that he ties round his waist. It's made up of 1,000 stitches, or in Japanese, seninbari. And apparently that's supposed to protect him, but it doesn't work. His wife puts in 1 stitch and passes it on to 999 other females, 1 stitch each. And he goes away to war protected by the wills of 1,000 females, but it doesn't work. This came off one of the Japanese submariners in Sydney Harbour. They're the men who died in Sydney Harbour. These 2 got caught in the boom nets. These 2 shot themselves. These 2 are still inside their submarine off Newport Beach, war grave. And there's the pilot, Susumu Ito, who only died 5 years ago, age 100. Got it? There's the Japanese submarine, longer than a football field. If it carries a midget submarine, 24 metres long, if it carries a midget, it would not carry, it would not carry an aeroplane. If it carries an aeroplane, that aeroplane is carried in that steel tank there with its wings folded. There's the plane the Japanese flew, or the same type of plane. It's called the Glen. This is a Japanese midget submarine. 2 torpedoes, and they're the cutters to cut the nets as they came in Sydney Harbour. But the Australians had put wire through the net, so they got tangled up in it. There's the plane taking off from the Japanese submarine I-21. There's the American ship they were attacking in the harbour, the Chicago. Oh, this is a long story. Would you like to hear this story? It's a strange story. My English sister married an Australian sailor who was serving on that English ship there when this big ship was sinking. There's a man coming down the ropes there, a man there, big long ship, sinking. We lost 850 men in this action. But that little ship, full of survivors, took them to Singapore, dropped them off at Singapore. The Japanese then overran Singapore. They were all taken prisoner. But the little ship carried on to Liverpool, England. And he goes ashore and he meets my sister. She brought him home. We couldn't understand the word he said. Whirlwind courtship. They got married and she came out to us in Sydney Harbour. The bow's been blown off it. You got it? This one here is the submarine with the 2 Japanese men still inside it. You cannot dive on that. It's a war grave. That's in Sydney Harbour. Oh, this is my job with the Royal Marines. I'm in charge of the grog, the rum. There's the gun on the Japanese submarine that attacked Newcastle. Almost as big as our guns here. 5.5 inch. These are the men I give the rum to. Sea soldiers, Marines.
Serious.
18 there.
Oh, that's you.
That's a street in Liverpool, my hometown.
Very good looking man, eh?
That was a long time ago. Well, this is on a farm in England. By the way, they're Italian sailors being rescued in England.
Oh.
You got the picture there, didn't you?
Yeah.
That's my hometown on fire in the German bombing during the war.
Really?
Fort.
We'll have a look at that one, though.
Then it became tram sheds. There's the lines going in. Then they knocked it down and built the opera house. This is another ship that was washed up on our beach, broke its back, and that was 1974.
Yeah.
Would you believe it was blown away at the very end of 1917? There's no traces of that now visibly from here. There's my friend's ship, just hit by an Italian torpedo. 51 men dead there.
Yeah, they just saved the front half of that. The front half of that.
That's right.
They
Yes,
saved
yes.
out of the way.
That's right, they saved half of it. This is in Malta. That's in Malta. This is up on the guns, up top here.
So do you have a girlfriend then?
Oh, I can tell you. Do you want to hear a funny story? Do you want to hear a funny story?
Yeah. Record it.
Yeah.
I got called up for the Royal Navy. Did my training around England. Finished up in Portsmouth Naval Base. Every day I looked up to see if there was a ship. No ship. I'm having my lunch one day and a sailor sitting opposite me, I heard him say he was being sent overseas and he didn't want to go. So I said, I'll go in your place. He said, will you do that? I said, yes. So we went to see the captain. And the captain said, right, switch places. Now, Bose, you're going overseas. Go back to Liverpool. 1 week's leave, then you're going overseas. Went back to Liverpool, went to the place where I worked, told the girls in the office, I'm going overseas. And one of the girls said to me, if you ever get to Malta, go and see this girl. So she wrote a girl's name on a card and an address. I put it in my wallet, forgot about it. Get back to Portsmouth, my name goes up on the board, Norm Bose, aircraft carrier, Mediterranean. I eventually finished up in Malta, in this place. There. I finished up in Malta. I worked in the captain's office. I had a good job in peacetime, but a rotten job in wartime. But the war had just finished by 2 months, so I had a good job. The captain had a Maltese sailor who ran messages for him. And when I was on duty, I had this Maltese sailor here. And if anything urgent came through, I'd say to him, take that to the captain, please, and off he'd go. Would you believe he's standing there this day? And I pulled out my wallet, and this little card fell out with the girl's name on. And I called the Maltese boy over, and I said, where's this place? the girl's name and address. I said, where's this place? He took one look at it and he said, that's my niece, and you're not taking her out. I said, anyway, I showed you that's in Malta. They're the men lining up for their rum ration, look at that. On the ship, they're all lining up for their rum.
Rum, yeah.
Very
Wow.
powerful stuff.
Rum.
When I came out the Navy, I got a job on a farm in England. And because in Malta you don't see much greenery, I got a job on a farm for 12 months just to see the English countryside again. This is a wedding on the top of the hill here, a society wedding, coaching horses. There's my garage. I'm in charge of the rum.
Oh, wow.
This is Navy rum. This is Australian rum. And look here, this is my hometown, Liverpool. Join the Navy or the Marines, you'll get all this and a pint of the best wine or half a pint of the strongest brandy or rum. Every day, 11:30. That's why we all join the Navy. There's your Prime Minister firing those guns upstairs.
There you go.
You can get the picture? Do you like that picture?
Yeah. It's
Dog
cute.
saying his prayers.
Yeah, that's it.
You get your picture? Back.
Yeah, it's cute.
When I was there in this fortress, this was full of sunken ships and sunken submarines just sticking out the water.
Yep.
They had 3,000 air raids, and the island is only 25 kilometres long. There's another. There's where I live there, base. There's a British Spitfire fighting a German Messerschmitt. There's an English ship coming into Russia. Just a block of ice.
Right one.
And this is me just recently on one of the most modern ships in the British Navy, down in Sydney. And there's the school I went to, 1544. Look at that,
1544. There you go.
1544.
Oh,
Nothing like that over here.
oh my gosh.
A long time ago.
1544?
And I was there for the 400th anniversary.
Well, what do you expect? Spectacular.
Well, people, that's my tour down here. I could take you up top now if you'd like to come.
Oh, yeah.
You would? Okay.
Thank you so much. Oh, yeah. Interesting.
A Japanese submarine was 6.5 kilometres out that way, and it opened fire on this town in 1942. And they fired 26 high explosive shells, right? One of them, you see the pedestrian crossing down there? Just on the other side of that pedestrian crossing, one shell exploded in the middle of the road, in the middle of the road. Right. Site of the town jail. That's where all the executions took place in Newcastle. Did you know that?
No.
That's where all the executions took place in Newcastle. See the other green hill in the distance? Yep. 6 high explosive shells, and I believe they were armour piercing shells. So only 3 exploded. One there in the middle of the road, where the white car is, and one on the breakwater. The others were picked up in the industries unexploded. We've got some of them on show here, so I'm on this one. They didn't explode. They've got to get something really, really hard. Armour piercing shells. Come on in. These are the they absolutely just put the lid and just turned it into a skull. just talk amongst yourselves there while I want to get this? Could you just talk amongst yourselves there? I'll be with you in a minute.
Hi guys, so nandito kami sa ibabaw ng pinuntahan natin kanina. So ito yon. Ang ganda ng view guys. Oh my goodness. Parang ano, pampawala ng stress.